Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl. This could be episode 219 of my poker vlog. For this one, I played the 1-3 deep stack table at Sarasota, Florida, the One Eye Jacks Poker Club. I have a ton of fun hands to go over, so we're going to get right into them. On the first hand of note, I look down at the button at Queen Deuce offsuit. When I button straddle to $5, there are 3 limps. I choose to just check this one, no reason to raise such a trash hand. Which makes us 4 ways to the flop, which comes King, Queen, 8, Rainbow. Middle pair not too great, but when 3 players check to me, I think we can just bet here for protection / value. We probably have the best hand here, and a $15 bet should thin the field. But on this one, the small blind and the big blind decide to call. And we pick up the filming with the deuce of spades on the turn. We turn 2 pair in a way in which we would almost never have it.
He's achieved symbiosis. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? He's achieved symbiosis.
And the small blind leads out for $15, and the big blind calls. We are certainly raising here. I mean, these players are limp callers, so I guess they have like King 5. Maybe some of the weakest kings here are just trying to bet, keep the pot small. Additionally, Jack 10, 10 9, some of those gutters and open-enders might try to lead here to name their own price, and we are absolutely having none of that when we turn 2 pair. I raise it up to $50. This raise forces the small blind to relinquish his hand. I guess he was just betting, seeing where he's at. But the big blind does not give up, he makes the call. And the river is the 4 of clubs. Quite a big dud, like there is no reason to be worried about that card at all. When my opponent checks to me, I think we have to go relatively big here. Close to 60%, 75% pox. We're really only valuing random kings, and hopefully my opponent has like King 9 offsuit in his limping range. Because the busted straight draws are just going to fold to anything, and that seems to be the case. When I throw out $85, my opponent folds before I even get the chips in the middle. So that means we're on a pretty good start. We win the first hand, and it seems like momentum's on our side. But on the next hand, we look down at pocket 10s of the red variety from the button where we straddle. 4 players limp, and we're definitely going to raise this one up pretty big here. We definitely don't want this to go massively multi-way. So I settle on a $30 size. Could go bigger, but this is 1-3, and we just versing limpers, so how strong could they really be? Well, a small blind, big blind, and a middle position player decide to call, so I'm going 4 ways to a flop, which is Jack 8 4 with 2 hearts. When it checks to me, I'm going to throw out a continuation bet. I think my opponents are likely going to be weighted towards heart draws, maybe some gut shot straight draws, and if they do have one of the random jacks out there, I mean, how strong could their kicker be when they're limp callers? Like Jack 9, Jack 8 would be pretty bad for us, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I bet $40. The small blind and the big blind fold, but then the middle position player decides to call, which means we are heads up to a turn card, which is the Queen of Hearts. On this one, my opponent leads for $50. Now, when we think about our opponent's range, would he lead on made flushes? Yeah, actually, probably. I think they would a lot of the time. But I do think made flushes goes a little bit bigger here. This lead actually feels more like King Jack with a heart, maybe Ace 8 offsuit with a heart. Either way, it certainly does not feel nutted, and it absolutely feels more like a middling strength value hand, to which we're ahead of some of the 8x, some of the Jack X that give up on the river we can steal away from. And the times my opponent doesn't have a flush draw, I can just hit a heart and be good, and 9 gives us a straight, so we're definitely not folding for this $50. And when I make the call, the river is the 5 of clubs. Now my opponent grabs a $100 chip and shows it to me before putting it in the middle. I don't really consider myself a live read expert, but his demeanor changed tenfold. He looked so much more confident on this 5.
Where is this new unfounded confidence coming from?
Like maybe he did just have Ace X of hearts and was kind of scared of the board pair, but now knows he has the nuts and feels great about betting. I don't know, but pocket 10s is certainly not a call here anymore. And when I make the fold, I don't really think too much of the hand in general, and the dealer pushes the pot, he flips over the entire board and gathers all the cards in one pile. I stop filming at this point since the hand is over, and the dealer asks my opponent for his cards, and then he proudly shows 6-7 of spades, laughing, saying he got one through on the vlogger, and there wasn't even a doubt in my mind that he rivered a straight, but he shows after all the cards are gone and bluffs the bluff. Like, he's pretending he bluffed that hand. I assumed to get some table image from other players, but it did not fool me even in the moment, and my opponent in this hand certainly led bluffed turn, got there on the river, and got no money once he made his hand. But, you know, if you want to show your cards and do some wacky stuff against me, it'll make the video, so congrats to that guy. But on the next interesting hand, I look down at 7-8 of clubs from the hijack with 1 limp. I make it $15. The small blind and the under the gun player calls, so I end up going 3 ways to a flop, which comes 10-9-4 with 2 hearts. And when it checks to me, I'm going to bet relatively big here. I don't really have any showdown value, but I have a ton of equity to make best hand by the river. So I bet $35, and on this one, only the under the gun player decides to call. So I'm going to a turn card, which is the Bink 6 of diamonds.
This is so exciting.
It is my turn to hit a straight, and because it's diamond specifically, I have just a ton of 2 barrels that are air here. Ace-X of hearts, Ace-X of diamonds, Queen Jack. So I get to go big here when I actually make my hand. Additionally, because I unblock all the draws, my opponent can have any of the flush draws or overcards or 10x. A lot of stuff he can have as well. So I bet $110, and maybe he didn't have as strong as I thought he would because he just folds pretty quickly. And so I also get no money when I make my hand. But we cruise along with another small one before we get down to the vlogger optimal seat and look down at Ace-10 of clubs from the hijack. With a button straddle, there's 3 limpers. I'm going to go a little bit bigger this time, try to thin the field slightly because seems like no one's really folding to these raises. So we're going to size up here 35 with only 3 limpers. And to this one, the small blind, the button, and the under the gun player calls. So we're still going 4 ways to a flop, which comes 9-9-5 with 2 clubs. On this flop, I think that it's kind of neutral. I have a range advantage, but my opponents have the nut advantage, if that makes sense. Any limp caller can have a random 9, but I have all the 10s, jacks, queens, over pairs that are good a lot of the time against the limper's range, but when they smack that 9, they're just crushed. Either way, with the nut flush draw and the fact that that beats a random 9, if my opponents have it, I'm going to bet $45. This bet looks like it's working out as the button folds, the small blind folds, but then the under gun player decides to call. And this is probably one of the worst scenarios for me, because this player specifically was definitely the tightest person at the table. I would expect most standard play to be raise your 9 because the club draw is clearly there. 6-7, 7-8. A lot of stuff that changes this board. But when you are reversing the very, very tight player, maybe they're just going to check call down with a 9. So when the turn is the 3 of diamonds and I don't make my clubs and it checks to me, I'm not going to try to bluff this one. I do not think my opponent is capped here. I think I'm just going to run into it a lot of the time. And we still get to just try to make our hand because how hard is it to river a club? When I check it back, the river is the 4 of diamonds. So we are left with ace high and my opponent leads for $60. I don't think I saw this opponent actually make a bet themselves the entire night. So I'm just going to give this an abundance of credibility. Additionally, we hope he has the ace-X of clubs. Like, I don't expect him to be turning like king, queen of clubs into a bluff here almost ever. So we're just going to let this one go and just think our opponent had a very strong hand here. On the next hand of note, I look down at ace king on the button off suit, and when I straddle, a middle position player makes it $20. The hijack and the cutoff decide to call. I am certainly 3-betting ace king from the button. I think the best size you could use here is $120, but I guess I was a little bit gun shy from my recent misses and missteps that I only make it 90. It's a little too small in my opinion, and my opponents may agree because the middle position and the cutoff both decide to call. We end up going 3 ways to a 3-bet pot, which comes king 7 deuce.
Oh. This should be good.
With 2 diamonds. And we're not really worried about anything here. If my opponent has pocket 7s, pocket deuces, they're going to get my whole stack. But we can get value from diamond draws, king queen, king jack, all kinds of stuff. So when it checks to me, we're going to go 2/3 size pot. I bet $150. Pretty much just my entire range would bet this size. If I had ace queen off suit, I would bet that. If I had king queen, pocket aces, pocket queens, all these hands bet this sizing, and I think it's a pretty good one. My opponents might have missed because they both fold pretty quickly, but we take down a pretty big 3-bet pot. I continue to win smaller, less notable ones before we arrive at the biggest hand of the night for me. When I am in the cutoff, I look down at pocket kings. With a button straddle, the big blind limps. Under the gun makes it $20. When it gets to me at the cutoff, I'm definitely going to raise this one. Happy to play a bigger pot in position with a premium. And it folds all the way back to the under gun player. He's not going anywhere. He makes the call. We end up going heads up to a flop, which comes bink, king 10 3 rainbow. When it checks to me, I would almost always check back top set, especially on a dry board. But I don't think this board's as dry as you think. If my opponent had like ace jack, queen 9, queen jack, or 10x. I think all these hands are going to call a small size bet. So we bet $35. I think even with my opponent's close to air, he's going to continue with all of it to nearly a quarter size bet. But he does not call this $35 bet. No, my opponent raises to $175.
LOL, I'll take your money, no problem. Done.
Pretty massive raise. He only has like 250 behind. So I wait like 5 or 6 seconds and then decide we're just getting it all in here. My opponent's never folding for $250 when he bets $175 himself, and I'm always going to have the best hand here. And when I put the money in, my opponent goes deep into the tank. And after about 20 seconds is when I realized what a massive mistake this was by me. My opponent's likely bluffing. He likely just has like pocket sixes or something. And we absolutely should have just called here and given my opponent the chance to just continue bluffs on the turn or bet when he checks to us small and just get the money in across 2 streets. So now I'm sitting here just hoping he calls. I have the nuts. I think I've overplayed it very significantly, giving my opponent every chance to get away from it that's even possible. But my original analysis turns out to be correct. You can't just put $175 in without calling the additional $250 behind. And when he puts it in, we agree to run the board out 2 times, but he has king jack, so he's actually pretty much dead. And after the runouts are complete, I end up stacking an opponent and scooping in a very big pot. Which brings us to the next fun hand of poker. We are in the small blind with ace king offsuit with a button straddle. I'm first to act. I raise it up to $25. The button is the only caller, so I end up going heads up to a flop, which comes bink ace 3.
Now that is sexier than Brazilian triplets.
So we are certainly running very hot in this short period. On this one, I think that my best play is to check and see what my opponent wants to do. Theory being is I'm not afraid of any run out at all, and I get a lot of information based on what my opponent bets. And when I check, my opponent bets $15. I don't think there's a way I can get all the stacks in by the river if I just call. So we're going to go for a small raise here, try to pump this pot up. If my opponent had like 6s, 7s, he's probably going to continue. And if he has like queen jack or king 10, I probably wasn't going to get a whole lot more money on this hand anyway. So I raised it up to $50, and my opponent doesn't take too long before making the call. The turn is the 5 of spades. It's at this point I decide that I'm going to be extremely fancy on this one. I'm going to check back turn and then just overbet rip river, thinking that my line makes no sense, that if my opponent has like pocket 7s, pocket 10s, it might confuse him enough to make the call. But when I check, my opponent bets $100 himself. And at this point, I'm just hoping he's got a weaker ace than me. Sometimes he's just going to have pocket 3s, ace 3, ace 5. But I also get to just stack ace jack, ace 10, basically every other ace out there. So we're just going to get it all in here. I raise all in, about $320 effective. My opponent makes the call. I ask him if he wants to run it once or twice. He says 1 time. This opponent had been running it twice all night, but now he's running it 1 time on this one. That's a bad sign for me. He might already just have a full house. But on the river 8 of diamonds, I show my hand, and my opponent just kind of nods and returns his hand to the dealer. That means I'm the winner. I take down another hand, stack another opponent, and we're just running pure on this table tonight. We end up cruising with another small one before we arrive at the final hand of note. I have ace king of diamonds in the big blind when the hijack raised to $20 off a relatively fresh buy-in. The small blind calls, I'm in the big blind, I make it $85. Both players decide to call, so a similar scenario as the last time I had ace king, and we end up going 3 ways to a flop, which comes 7-7-4 rainbow with 1 diamond. Part of me wants to bet here. I think that if I check, my hand turns a little bit face up. But then I remember I check my entire range a lot of the time. I could easily have 8+. So not too concerned that I give away too much from just checking here. And when I check, the hijack goes all in for $215. The player to my right folds and it's back on me. Man, I have 2 overs. I have backdoor diamonds. This player had been an extremely high amount of action, showing bluffs, drinking, just having a good time, but would he really try it again? This is the first hand after getting stacked by someone else and rebuying, so this is like his 3rd buy-in, and I just don't think people continue to play crazy when their image is quite bad. So I just think he has not even a 7, just like pocket 6s, a random 4, 5, 6. A lot of hands that are just slightly ahead of ace king or have a decent amount of equity. So after a little bit of thinking, I just decided to let this one go. And my opponent proudly windmills king queen offsuit. It was pretty much the best scenario I could ever hope for if I make that call, but sometimes the nits just need to be punished. But I end up making $855 in this game across 4 hours, which equated to $213 an hour or 71 big blinds an hour. In poker, there'll be a lot of ups and downs, and it's very important to enjoy the ups because it's not always going to be this way. Today, I made some good hands. Kings made 3 of a kind, ace king made 3 of a kind. Both got paid, got to stack some opponents. When you are making hands and getting paid, you're always going to have a good result. And it is nice to just enjoy the run good for a little bit. Thank you for watching this video. I very much appreciate it. If you would subscribe or like the video, it would let me know you enjoy my content. And I would appreciate that as well. And I will see you on the next one.